So, things are pretty challenging right now. If you're accumulating wealth, this might just be the biggest sale in markets for a very long time. A real opportunity to accumulate more assets at lower prices. But what if you're about to retire? Is now really the right time to cross that line and stop earning forever? Hi and welcome back to the channel. My name is Pete Matthew. I'm a chartered financial planner based here in the UK. Now, if you've been looking forward to retiring and you have built your nest egg to a figure where it looks like you've got enough, you've probably been watching in horror in the last few weeks and months as nearly all asset classes from shares to bonds to crypto have been declining in value. And you might be wondering what, if anything, you should do now. So let me try and give you some context and some reassurance that all is not lost. And the first thing I want to drive home is that now is really not the time to be making wholesale changes to your investments. Plenty of people here on YouTube and elsewhere are preaching every kind of scenario and every kind of solution to magically address what's going on. And the only way we'll know who was right or wrong will be in hindsight, a couple of years down the line maybe. So you might as well not bother trying to work all that stuff out now. And with everything so volatile, really the last thing you want to do is to sell this, buy that, in order to try and add just a little bit of value. Things are just too volatile. So if anything, moving money around adds more risk. Now it might feel like you're doing something constructive, but the odds are that you'll do more harm than good. So what could you consider doing? Much as I hate to say it, one thing you could consider is deferring your retirement plans. Now, it might be too late to do that. Maybe you've handed in your notice and they're already planning your retirement party. And if it is too late, we'll get to what you can do in just a sec. But for some of you, deferring might actually be an option. And in doing so, that should give your portfolio some time to recover, though of course it might get worse before it does. And if you don't need to retire and nobody's kicking you out, then you could consider just hanging on for a while. Yeah, it might not be the most attractive prospect if you've got your heart set on calling it a day. No one promised any of us an easy life though. Yes, it would probably suck, but it might just make sense. Remember also that retirement doesn't necessarily have to be a cliff edge, and it might be the case that you can phase slowly into retirement, reducing your hours and your income in steps. And this could mean that you would still have some income coming in, just a lower level, and so you wouldn't have to draw so heavily from your investments and pensions, which of course would give more of the money time to recover. Obviously, you need to talk this over with your boss if you're employed, or maybe plan for it if you're self-employed. But phasing is a good practical option to ease the pressure on your portfolio in the short term. Or maybe you just do something completely different, but like low key for a while, maybe 2 or 3 days a week for the first couple of years of your retirement. That'll have the same benefit, it's just a different job to the one that you've been doing. If you're anything like most people that I've worked with who want to retire, chances are that you've got some expenses planned to kind of mark the occasion, maybe a holiday or a new car or something. Those things can be deferred for a while if needs be. No, it isn't fun, but it is the grown-up thing to do if money is likely to be tighter than you'd hoped it would be, and certainly if it makes a difference between you retiring or not. And the same goes for your general expenses. We're all of us, no matter what time of life, experiencing eye-watering fuel prices when we fill up our cars or we're paying our gas bills or whatever. And when costs rise, we might just need to be prepared to tighten the belt a little bit. So take a look at your budget. See if there's any fat in there maybe. Kill some subscriptions you don't need. Whatever it takes. So far this might all seem a bit negative, you need to stop doing this and defer that, but I'm going to flip that around in just a minute. But before we do, if this is useful, please do me a favor and hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already, it really does help, so thank you. Okay, so what's next? Well, if you're lucky enough to have a defined benefit pension, and maybe that's a couple of years away from paying out, you could look at taking those benefits early. This would provide an additional income that might soften the financial impact of you finishing work, reduce the strain on your portfolio supporting you. I often talk about the danger zone in early retirement when not all your income sources have kicked in and you're drawing most heavily on your capital. Well, taking DB pension benefits early mitigates that a little bit. Now, if you do that, you are going to be paid less than the full amount, but you will obviously receive them for longer. They will also likely be index linked, and with inflation high at the minute, that means that that income is likely to increase at a decent rate maybe. It'll be capped usually, but you're still going to get some decent increases. So definitely speak to your pension admin department and see what options you might have, and maybe just rethink your plans a bit. Now, if you have cash in the bank, which is uninvested, that should be the money that you spend first. So if you were planning to draw down on an invested portfolio and it's currently looking a bit sick, then maybe you could rethink what money you take from where and when. With inflation eroding the buying power of that money that you've got in the bank and invested assets looking a bit distressed, cash now more than ever serves its main purpose, which is to spend in the present or in the very short-term future. Again, if you've got DB pension benefits and there's a lump sum payable, you could opt for more of a lump sum maybe and spend that for a while until markets recover. That will reduce your guaranteed pension income, so it's going to need some planning, but it's definitely an option to consider. Always make sure you retain some cash for emergencies. That's true for all of us, no matter our time of life. Don't spend all the cash you have because you don't want to be forced to sell distressed investments because something unexpected happens. Now, if you absolutely have to draw from your invested portfolio, try to do the least amount of damage possible by drawing smaller amounts at a time. So instead of taking out 6 months of your spending needs, you could take a month at a time maybe, or 2 or 3 months. Look for which of your assets are least distressed and maybe draw from there if you can. Because that leaves more money invested for longer, giving the portfolio as a whole a greater chance of recovery. Now, assuming you have the income to do it, I think there's an argument that you could still be adding to your retirement pots, your investment pots, building them up further before you start to draw on them. If assets are cheap, then this is your last chance to buy at a discount potentially. Obviously, you need to tread carefully, but definitely consider adding to your portfolio if you can. Just make sure you keep enough cash on hand. Now is a really good time to have a buffer, so don't be tempted to gamble all your emergency fund just because assets are cheap. They might go down further yet. I think there's an argument for considering selling your property sooner rather than later, if you're thinking of downsizing at some point anyway. Right now, I'm recording this in July 2022, the housing market is red hot. Prices are very high. And as borrowing becomes more expensive, with rising interest rates and affordability factors being squeezed, it's pretty likely that the housing market will cool in due course. Now that sounds suspiciously like timing the housing market, doesn't it? But if you're going to move anyway, you could consider taking this opportunity to downsize and bolster your cash reserves. Obviously there's costs involved, stamp duty and all that, but run the numbers, look around, maybe you could take advantage. So you'll notice that I've talked primarily about behavioral things here and less about kind of hard financial moves you can make. In volatile markets, I believe that the biggest factor in how well you come out the other side is your behavior throughout. So panicking and bailing out to cower under your duvet until everything gets better is just not the way. Instead, slow, careful consideration of your various options and taking an adult view of the practical steps you can take is the way to get through it. Really, no option should be off the table. You might not have planned to do a couple of days a week at Tesco in your first couple of years in retirement, but would it really be so bad? Or will it hurt you too much if you keep driving your 4-year-old car for another couple of years before changing it? Let's try and ignore the inflammatory language used by the media, both mainstream and social, and instead carefully plan our way through the current trials. Now, if you want technical stuff about what's going on in markets and how you might want to respond to that, I highly recommend the Pension Craft and Damien Talks Money channels. I'll put links to them below. But folks, I hope this was helpful. There's always practical stuff you can think about, and sometimes it's just about tweaking your plans a little bit. So I hope it gave you some food for thought. If it did, you know what to do. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Thank you so much for doing that, and I'll see you in the next video.